Hi, I'm Lyndon Thorpe, and welcome to the Burnout Breakthrough. And I'm here every Monday, and it's very hot. I'm here in Japan, and we've got really scorching weather, but very thundery today because we've got a typhoon coming. Typhoons, earthquakes, you name it, we've got them all here. Anyway, to get started, then, this week's theme. Really carrying on from previous weeks is how we can get back into contact with ourselves. If people are burning out, they've lost contact. Their nervous system is not regulated, as some neuro people they use that word, regulated. I don't go with that word, but never mind. If we are disconnected from ourselves, then we don't feel what's happening in the nervous system. It's kind of closed to us because we're filtering everything through the limited mind, through the intellect, through the visual. We're not experiencing things directly. So I have been saying recently that direct experience really is the key to everything. So all my work with burnout is not through studying. Of course, I know the facts, but there's a problem there too, because many analyses of burnouts say very pointedly that this is unique. So, we are 8 billion inhabitants of planet Earth. There are 8 billion unique souls on this planet. And therefore, burnout is not showing many patterns that are repeated. There are all sorts of symptoms that are coming from that individuality. Remember, we have unique fingerprints. That's how we are identified. Finally, it's the kind of legal identification of our existence. And those fingerprints are unique. So each of us is unique, and therefore the symptoms and the presentation and the timing of burnout, we're not finding patterns that are, researchable or replicable. So it's very important to realize that my work with burnout has come not from studying. I can't get any methods or any analyses or research really on burnout. So it's really something I've recognized and realized myself. Now, actually, I'm going back, and I have told this story before, but when I was 23, my brother burnt out. Now, in those days, that's quite a long time ago now, we called it nervous breakdown. So he had a nervous breakdown. He was very highly strung and very bright, too bright, very high level of intelligence. And so he wanted to become a teacher, desperately, passionately wanted to be a teacher. But after he'd done all the qualifications and went out into the field, he realized that schools were not like textbook situations. And he was given some very difficult classes in a very poor area of the city of Manchester, actually, where we were born. And he just couldn't cope with these students, these children. They were middle school children, 12, 13. And he couldn't cope with them. He couldn't control them. And this built up, this kind of lack of control of these students built up until he was just in a state of chaos and also panic all the time. So maybe today we'd say he had panic attacks. He already had some breathing problems because he had asthma, but he would start to hyperventilate quite easily just at the thought of going into that classroom. And eventually what happened was he completely broke down. He couldn't even get out of bed, never mind go into the classroom. He just couldn't sleep, he couldn't eat. There's so many things going wrong. He couldn't breathe. And so after some examinations by medical people, it was pronounced that he could no longer teach in classrooms. He should never teach again. And so he was pensioned off. He received a pension straight away. But that was at the age of 21. So, my first experience of burnout was all those years ago with my brother, and I helped him to recover with all sorts of interesting things, mainly music, which I was a music therapist at the time, also meditation, Alexander work, all this kind of body work, and I helped him to recover. And he recovered, but it took 2 years. So that's my main case study that I learned so much from. Really, I've never stopped wanting to prevent burnout since that terrible time with him, and never wanted to stop, working with each individual and how they may possibly burn out. Every individual will be different. So there's no theory behind this. It is experience, and it is applying the strands of my life: music therapy, indigenous wisdom, meditation, mindful practices, Buddhist wisdom, all of this, to trying to prevent it, but also trying to help people recover from it. My brother is now in his 60s, and he really never recovered from that. And the disappointment of not being able to teach. Yeah, so it's really to be avoided, really is to be avoided. So what I'm seeing on the internet at the moment is that people are rather confused about burnout. Of course, they're trying to find patterns that can be theorized about and grouped together and researched, but that kind of data is not really available. So people are trying to make sense of burnout, but I think it's becoming less and less clear. So, yeah, please don't think that burnout begins with exhaustion. Not necessarily the case. In my brother's case, he was not exhausted. He had spent 3 years studying, and he loved it, loved the theory, loved the studying. But after 6 weeks of being in the classroom, he couldn't take any more. So it's not exhaustion necessarily. That may be a factor. But it's something that begins much earlier than exhaustion, I would say. And it begins when we gradually lose contact with ourselves. And he actually admitted that he didn't know who he was, he didn't know what he wanted. We went through this a lot in his mindful sessions. So please beware of mistaking burnout for tiredness. It isn't necessarily so. Many people try to recover by sleeping and don't feel refreshed, even if they may be able to sleep. Some people can't sleep. But, recovery from burnout, it will not respond to just sleep. It's not enough. In my experience with clients and so on. So really we can say that it's a gradual loss of inner organization. You begin to notice scattered thoughts, not being able to prioritize, everything feeling equally urgent. Perhaps language becomes confused, and perhaps you're reacting more quickly, which leads people to think you're really on the ball and up for it, as they may say. But it may not necessarily be the case. It can lead to burnout later. If you're very quick in everything you do, too quick maybe, that may be a sign of burnout. And really, yes, your body never really settles. You can't rest. Even if you go and do a different activity, go swimming or go walking or something, you still are unable to switch the mind off. This mind, the limited mind, as I call it. Brilliant, but limited mind. So we can see it's about capacity, really. This doesn't have an infinite capacity. It's limited by concepts, analyses, calculations. Those are limited because they're intellectual. And the intellect can't operate without symbols. And so we need words, which we know are so difficult. And we therefore need interpretations of words and agreement about interpretations and all of that paraphernalia to really get to grips with what the intellect is amassing. And also it should be visual if it's intellectual. So I often describe the intellectual visual mind as a firework display. It's brilliant and we can't stop looking at it. We want to see these explosions in the sky, but we can't go on watching firework displays forever. The whole business of a firework display is that it is unusual. It is unique. It's once a year maybe. So if we keep attending the firework display, of course, we're going to become saturated with ideas and concepts and arguments and calculations and estimations and summarizing and so on. So maybe we could describe burnout as people becoming less capable because their capacity here is shrinking. And of course, we are great performers. Human beings can perform beautifully. And so maybe you know people who are still performing as if they are firing on all cylinders. But inside, and they've retreated really because the inside and the outside are not congruent. That's another factor with burnout. Now, people may seem to be very successful, very aware, etc., but inside, terrible things are happening and they're beginning to collapse. Burnout intrinsically then is about becoming separated from who you truly are. And so there's a great cry at the moment in the business community that people are not present. They're not authentic. And of course, with AI around, that can become a real kind of threat, if you like. Maybe it's AI that's doing all the work, or maybe you're even a twin that AI has created from videos of you. So there are all these things to contend with in our digital AI era. So this week, to help us with this, because I really believe that, as I said at the beginning, we can't put it down to theory, we can't diagnose it, we can't really make any conclusions about burnout because it's a case-by-case situation, it seems. One word that may help this week is the word distillation, to distill. I love this word, and this is my word of the week. Um, when we distill, we don't necessarily add things. Okay, so if we think of distilling alcohol, for example, um, we're not adding to the liquid that we're distilling. We're heating it and we're getting drops, distilled drops of essential alcohol, the essence coming down from that heated alcohol. So we're not adding more alcohol or more of the mix we're distilling. We are making it more potent by distilling it. Okay, so let's think now about the intellectual mind. We are always being advised to learn more. You can't do this because you don't know enough yet. To read, to study, to qualify, all of these things, to add more knowledge or wherewithal or savvy or whatever you want to call it. To read another book, to take another course, to try another productivity system, to work harder, to push through. And everything is based on accumulation. But what if accumulation is exactly what the exhausted nervous system cannot absorb? One of the comments my brother made when he was really not in a good state at all was, I can't empty my head. My head is so full of all the things I should be doing in the classroom with these kids. He couldn't empty his head. He was overwhelmed by the knowledge that was rolling around in his head, and he couldn't switch it off. Yeah, and he found it very difficult to sleep because of that. So all his training and studying was coming up like a huge flood and overwhelming him totally because he had no control over it. So distillation is a wonderful word because it doesn't add. We don't need to add more knowledge, more experience, more in-depth analyses or whatever. And nothing essential is lost by distillation. In fact, we gain because we're making everything potent. Okay. So it's what remains after the distillation that becomes so important, and that we could call direct experience. Okay, so Lodestone, my product, Lodestone, is about expanding capacity through direct experience. You're not learning anything new consciously. You are experiencing something directly, fully, with your body, with your spirit, with all of your humanness or your human being. And many people will, I think, agree with me because they actually are saying this, that through direct experience, we can contact true healing. And that's what burnout needs. We need to heal from it. And my brother did through music therapy, through the work I did with his body and his mind too. So healing begins when we are directly experiencing something, because we're not seeing everything through intellectual lenses. We're not interpreting. We're not concluding and summarizing and all of those things we do that we think are so real. Direct experience means that the intellect shuts down. The intellect cannot receive direct experience. It interprets it. It can write a book about it. It can perhaps, capture it in other ways, intellectual ways, but it cannot receive. The intellectual mind cannot receive. Only the body and spirit can receive. Last week we talked about receiving, which is what most people are not doing. People are transmitting. And that's what happened to my brother. He was transmitting all of his knowledge and all of his teaching know-how to these kids. And of course, he was not listening to the kids. And of course, they started to bully him, and they push him into losing control and discipline over them. There was no two-way street there. He was transmitting all his knowledge. So direct experience is so precious. And I'm hoping that you realize that my lodestone and a lot of the work I do is about direct experience only. Lodestone is direct experience. And direct experience will expand your capacity, not your intellectual knowledge, but your capacity, your container to live fully and to receive from your life, to receive from other people. So Lodestone begins with practice, and it's 30 days of practice. 30 days is the time that most psychologists, psychiatrists say it takes to change a habit. So a habit is enabled by the wiring of the brain. We develop habits. And it takes a long time to actually break those habits by softening the hardwiring of the brain. We have to practice. Lodestone begins with practice, not explanation, not knowledge, not theory, because explanation speaks mainly to the thinking mind. Direct experience allows the whole human to recognize something. And so when people do Lodestone, they very often say to me, "Oh, I feel so relaxed, I can't explain it." And I'm jumping for joy, because that's a real sign that their body has responded to the practice, and their spirit and the intellectual mind can't possibly respond. So that's a great sign to me that the practice is beginning to penetrate. So before we explain, before we analyze, before we judge, we simply receive. And inside us, and we can look at that at many levels, it could be the endocrine system, it might be the nervous system, it could be the skeletal system, any of the human systems, of which there are many, begin to reorganize themselves. And then we start to feel different. This week on Your Body is Your Business Plan, the masterclass, we're talking about scaling your business or your organization or whatever you're doing without burning out. So I'm going to be talking more about this on Wednesday at 1300 BST. So please, if you'd like to know more about that, please check the comment box below this window, and I'll leave the link for you to find out. So most people in the business community believe that scaling means becoming bigger. I think healthy scaling begins much earlier than that. It begins by becoming clearer, not bigger, clearer. Before we scale a business, we distill the human being that is running that business. Because whatever is scattered inside us eventually becomes scattered around us. Remember, our inner world really reflects the outer world. It's a two-way street, you know. And so whatever becomes organized within us begins to organize our work outside. It begins to organize our relationships and our leadership, most of all. So this is really important when we are in business and we're scaling. So whether or not you're a leader in corporate company, or you have your own business, or your own entrepreneur activities, this really matters. Scaling is not getting bigger, it's getting clearer. And so in my case, in my second year of business, I began to cut down. I cut down my content, I cut down my live broadcasts, I cut down everything, and I really started to focus on relationships. Well, that's an example. I wasn't going global and, putting adverts on every TV channel and all of that. I went smaller and I went clearer. And I realized that the relationships in my life were key to how my business would progress and succeed. And that it all came from me starting out from that place of inner success and inner appreciation and approval. I hope that makes sense. So today, I'd like to simply invite you to notice. That's the best place to start. Not to fix anything, not to analyze, just to notice. Where in your life have you been adding more? On the material plane, we think more is better. We think more money, more space, a bigger car, more reach, and those things become commodities. And so we want more. We want more and more and more. When really we need much, much less. And yes, where is life quietly asking you to distill, to potentize, to get the intense, potent drops of everything you've done together, rather than accumulate more of the undistilled things, the clutter. Many people say that, that busyness is not productivity, and that productivity is not to be considered. And I really agree with that. It's not how much you do, it's not how much effort you put in. That's the proletarian work ethic, which is way out of date now. It's not about the hours you put in. In fact, the more hours you put in, the more likely you are to burn out. So, please ask yourself those two questions. Where in your life have you been adding more, when perhaps you should really be needing less? And secondly, where is life quietly asking you to distill rather than accumulate? The more you accumulate, the more clutter you have, the more you have to file and sort out and categorize. The more lean you are in your activities in the outer world, the simpler things are, and the less likely. Marketing is very key now. Lean business. The simpler, the better. And at all costs, I want you not to burn out. All of my lovely audience out there, LinkedIn and YouTube, and all my contacts and communications and so on. Don't burn out. It's the most terrible thing to recover from, and you may never recover from it. My brother never really did recover from it. He's always been very mentally very delicate. So to close then, perhaps burnout then is not telling us that we are failing. No, it is not. Perhaps it's rather inviting us to discover what is essential. You know, it's like going backpacking. I backpacked around the world when I was 50 for 2 years. I lived out of a backpack and I traveled around the world. It's the most glorious time of my life. But I only had one backpack and that was with me the whole time. I didn't send luggage on ahead or anything like that. So everything in my backpack was essential to my life. I sometimes sent souvenirs home to family and so on, but I didn't carry those around with me. And all I had in my backpack was what was absolutely essential for my day-to-day living. And I had to minimize that because my pack was too heavy. So think of your life as traveling with a backpack for 2 years. What can you throw away? What can you leave behind? And what is left? What is your essential kit? And perhaps that, beginning like that, is exactly where we should always begin. Here, now, through direct experience such as you're having now. I hope you're not taking notes. I hope you are 100% here and now with me. Direct experience is the key to balanced body, mind and spirit, and also to happiness. Because if you start to burn out, you will become less and less happy. It maybe happiness will become even a performance for your loved ones, you know. But inside, how are you feeling? So, of course, this all comes back essentially to knowing yourself, which we also talk about quite often here on the Burnout Breakthrough. So, yeah, observation, in a nutshell, I'll just run through those points again. Observation is not theory. They're very different. Someone losing contact with themselves means someone burning out. And burnout starts before exhaustion. Some of the unique signs: scattered thoughts, confused language, everything becomes urgent, emotional reactivity, and the body never really settles. We think we should add more to be successful. No, burnout cannot absorb more. That's the point. Accumulation is the opposite of recovery. So lean business, lean practice, these are very important things. And lodestone practice begins long before we explain. In fact, we don't need to explain with lodestone. There's no need, and there's no language that adequately does it. Direct experience before analysis, and receiving before understanding. The body doesn't need to understand. The body knows. The body knows everything. And the body is here and now. We can't breathe in the future. We can't breathe in the past. Breathing is your body lifeline. It's here and now. It's the only place we can breathe. So always begin with here and now. Don't fix things. Just notice. And notice what is ready to be distilled. Constantly distilling your discoveries, your experiments, your A/B testing. Constantly distilling and beginning here and now. So one sentence I'd like to leave you with, and don't worry, I'll put all this under the window. Whatever is scattered within us eventually becomes scattered around us. Whatever becomes organized within us begins to organize everything we touch. that's a really natural bridge between burnout, distillation, direct experience, and Wednesday's Scaling Without Burnout Masterclass. Do come and join us. I'd love you to do that. If you have questions after my little talk, please leave them below. I'll just check to see if we have any comments. No, we don't have any comments today. So please leave questions, comments, whatever you like, beneath this window. And I'll be back again next week, hopefully with a guest. I won't tell you who, but I've got someone to come and join me in next week's Burnout Breakthrough. So I'll see you next week for more journeys and exploration of burnout and how to break through it. Thank you so much. This is Lyndon Thorpe. I'll see you next Monday, same time, same place. Bye for now.